Welcome back to the Eric Krown crypto channel. Wishing you a happy and healthy start on this nice Wednesday morning over here from Helsinki, Finland. We're back in the good old battle station. Unfortunately, dealing with some technical issues on my other computer. Nice CPU overheating, but you don't give a fuck about that. You give probably more fucks about some good old price action. So I wanted to follow up on the last few days of price analysis, and let's just jump into it right now, starting off with the short-term timeframes. Actually, not the short-term timeframes, the two-day timeframe. So based off the hidden bearish divergence on the two-day timeframe and the daily bearish divergence, of which this was a pretty shallow drive over here, and also daily stochastic turning down as well as many of the things too. We were looking for a move back down, basically to the 382 Fibonacci retracement minimum, which is what we got yesterday. And yeah, it's what we got yesterday. Basically, right around there, 22,650 or so. Thus far, having a bit of a bounce. But here's the thing, as Bitcoin did put in a bit of an interesting move at that 23,500-ish region yesterday, there is potential for a trap setup here. I want to be very deliberately clear, however, until that criteria is met, which we'll go over in a second, I am still looking for downside, or at least, it'd have to be, as far as an analyst goes, more on the downside of the equation for the short term. But here's the thing. When we go into the short-term timeframes, there is a trap setup going on right now. Where essentially is it, or what essentially is it? Well, any sort of a closure, even on the 4-hour timeframe, above yesterday's high, which was 23,500, and then yes, I would call this a bit of a trap, thus confirming a higher low, thus implying targets back up towards the weekend highs, which was $24,000 plus, and very likely continuation from there. Very likely somewhere around 26 to 27,000 bucks if I had to guess. In this case right here, there are a few very interesting indications on the short-term timeframes that I think kind of corroborate that story as a potential likelihood. So on the 4-hour timeframe, we do see that 4-hour BBWP, which measures volatility, the dispersion of returns, is extremely low right now. And while it is extremely low, it does imply that the expansion phase from this is, likely going to have a lot of juice to actually break the range in this case and, go for some actual, major continuation. On top of that, we do see that lower term time frame stochastic momentum on the hourly is turning up and will be remaining with upside posturing as long as Bitcoin is closing above 22,800. Okay, this is just a very short term time frame though. I should be very clear with that. We also do see that it's hitting a nice little short term trend line here, governing the last few lows from the 1st and 2nd of August, and now potentially the 3rd of August as well. When we go to the full hour time frame, same thing, coming in from very, very low levels, will be remaining with upside posturing as long as Bitcoin is above 22,750. And when we go to the 6-hour time frame, also will be turning up. However, in this case, this will be turning up above that trap confirmation pivot, which is 23,600. Close enough in this case. I was saying 29,500 earlier, basically the same thing, at least in my opinion. And that can have major implications with the higher term timeframes, of course, because we'd see the daily remain with upside posturing right here. As long as Bitcoin closes above 23,000 bucks, that remains consistent. Again, I want to reiterate very, very clearly here that until that does happen, technically speaking, I should be looking for some more downside upon a validation below that 382 Fibonacci retracement. So I want to see a short-term time frame close below about 22,500, where essentially what I'd be looking for next, 22,000 bucks on the 0.5 fib right here. Very likely a short-term time frame bounce there. That'd be kind of like the last chance for hope, at least in my opinion, for some Boolah continuation here on a higher low, because that still would be very obviously a higher low. If that area does fail, that's at the point where, I look for the next move down somewhere around the 618, which is 21,350. Very likely another short-term bounce there. Very likely gets faded. Very likely works its way down towards the weekly range lows here. So that's kind of what's at stake for right now. Again, as Bitcoin is literally within the middle of this current short-term time frame range, to me, that's a complete no trade zone. Not that I trade off of this stuff to begin with. I trade more so off of the statistically based analysis that I show over here, of which we can get into this as well, because I wanted to represent the higher term time frame continuation picture a little bit more well-roundedly. So in this case, this is the PMARP weekly mean reversion chart. First, I should explain what the PMARP indicator is. It is an indicator that measures the distance that price action is away from the current specified moving average, which in this case, I'm using a 20 VWMA, 100 look back for this analysis. And what we have observed is that over the full history of Bitcoin, of which there are 12 prior iterations, which is a lot for a weekly time frame, there has been an average bounce from extreme lows, which I define as below 2 percentile right here, which yes, indeed, it did hit in early June, of about 59%. done over the course of an average of 53.5 days. Well, we're getting very close to that average days met for the next local high, as if we do measure from that prior low, 53 days puts us into the second week of August. So a little bit less than 1 week from now, or actually 5 days from now. And basically that first week of August, from the 8th to the 13th, basically, is where that'd say that on average, we do kind of expect to find around that local high. Keep in mind, this is a signal that we got way back over here nearly 2 months ago now. So, when we're talking about averages, there's going to be some variance around those averages. There's going to be some that are more, there's going to be some that are less. In this case, we're pretty fucking close to that number already. So I do want to really entertain the possibilities that we might have already hit that number. And that is why the downside is still very much relevant here, amongst other things that we spoke about yesterday. Until then, however, there is an average bounce about 59%. Again, a lot of variance with it, or actually a little bit less variance with this. For example, we have seen as low as a 46.69% move off the lows. Granted, that same signal, and we've seen as high as basically 100% move, So, if we were to play around with those numbers, is what Bitcoin's seen thus far off the lows comparable with that from about 41.25%? That would actually be on the lowest end, to be fair. That would be the lowest read that we'd have thus far. Not by a whole hell of a lot of a margin, but, it is there. If we were to extend that even to 50%, where does that put Bitcoin? It's $26,500, which I think is probably, that would kind of make a little bit more sense in my own mind. Again, these are statistics. They don't need to be exact, but they need to be they need to be relatable. And I'd say that right now it is still relatable, but it would be a little bit on the lower end of that, of that trajectory. If we were to play up towards like 55% or 59%, that puts Bitcoin at about $27,500. So ultimately, what does that essentially imply? Well, it does imply that I think at best, we do see Bitcoin, if it does confirm that trap move up somewhere around these regions, somewhere between about 26 to 27, I think would be kind of likely in this case. Until then, until Bitcoin actually trades above that little local high that we did see from yesterday's plane trip, I would actually hold off on making any sort of, major moves with this. Just personally speaking, I'm looking for the obvious move, not the not the gambling move, which I kind of consider this one to be as of this current moment. So ultimately, that's all that I'm looking at right now. Kind of nice and cut and dry. Just following up on the last few weeks of analysis, I think that we've gotten a lot of the easy moves right here. Now comes kind of the hard part, at least in my opinion. So again, wrapping things up, as long as Bitcoin's below 23.5. I actually do remain bearish, or I should remain bearish. I'm not trading off of this, personally speaking, but the likelihood of going down would obviously be a little bit higher. Of course, if Bitcoin starts to trade back above there, that confirms this is a local low. That would be a higher low. And then I'd be looking for those higher term time frame looks that we spoke about earlier and over the past couple months here to continue to take over with targets higher, as high as maybe 27,000 and change or something like that. Other than that, I think that's a good place for me to wrap up on this video. I wanted to make a note to actually talk about this. You know that I love my trading fee reductions because, well, when you're trading a lot of contracts, it actually does start to add up quite a fair bit. And Bighead's offering 15% off of their own trading fees with the link over here. I actually might even consider doing copy trading there. I'm undecided whether it should be BitGet or Bybit. Perhaps I'll ask the community or if people even happen to care about that. I'm not necessarily certain how these things go to begin with, however, because, well, I don't know. Do they literally just like put a bot on exactly what I do? That would be well, I don't usually enter in with market orders, so that might be a little bit strange to do. And then also what else? Instagram. Yes, I've been posting like a fucking madman on Instagram recently. So if you do happen to give a fuck about, trading related content, but not necessarily like what we're doing right here, that might be a good thing to check out. There is a link in the description below for that as well. Anyways, cool. I'm gonna be signing off now. I want to be wishing you well, want to be wishing the best. Take care, much love, and see you hopefully soon.